Before we begin, 3 messages. When my company needed to develop a key mobile product, one that I was counting on as a new source of revenue, I knew exactly who to turn to. Macadamian. They delivered on time with incredible attention to detail, and I was able to get product into customers' hands faster than I ever thought possible. I've personally known them for 10 years, and they do make great products even better. Check them out at www.macadamian.com. Here's a riddle. How do you build native cross-platform mobile applications quickly without having to rewrite code and hire consultants at a huge cost? Titanium from Appcelerator. Called the easy button for mobile application development, it allows you to focus more on what's important, getting product out the door. Join the more than 1.5 million active developers who have created over 13,000 apps at www.appcelerator.com. If you're a freelancer or running your own small business, the one thing you probably wish you could do quicker and easier is invoicing. That's where FreshBooks.com comes in. They take the pain out of invoicing and get you paid faster. Effortlessly create invoices and email them to your clients. They can view them, print them, and even pay you right away with PayPal or any of their 11 other payment gateways. FreshBooks.com can automate late payment reminders and help track your billable hours at the office or while on the go with their apps for iPhone, BlackBerry, and Android. I'm only one of over 2 million really satisfied customers, and you can be one as well, all for free. Just head to www.freshbooks.com and sign up. When you do, be sure to say you heard of them from untether.tv, and one of you, my loyal viewers, will win a birthday cake each and every week. Doesn't even have to be your birthday. Get started today for free at www.freshbooks.com. Hello everybody, welcome to untether.tv. My name is Rob Woodbridge, and this is the television show where we bring you casual conversations with mobile rock stars. And I've got one again, this time from Palo Alto, California, home of Silicon Valley, home of this one of these tidal waves of insane mobile innovation. And I'll just paint a little picture for you, which is really, the question I think that this company is answering, and especially Joe, the founder, is answering, is how can mobile software help customer service without actually speeding customer service up or allowing you to pay from a mobile device, which we've seen a lot of activity happening from it. And I think that the answer, and you'll see through this, is keeping people and establishments really honest. And that's how Tello is doing this. And they are committed to helping companies improve customer service by providing real-time insight into customer experience. And here to talk about how they're doing this is the founder and CEO, Joe Beninato, right? I got that right?
You got it right.
Beninato. So Joe, my first question is really, what's an MIT graduate in aerospace engineering doing in a startup like this? How did you end up at Tello? Weren't you going to go to the moon?
I started off a long time ago. Actually, I worked at Northrop for a short time, and then coming out of college, was trying to figure out what to do. And I ended up, instead of going to one of the 5 or 6 aerospace companies that I could have, I came to a small software company here in Santa Clara, and that was the beginning of my life in startups over the last 20 years. What's interesting is my aerospace degree actually is pretty relevant. Startups are a lot like, if you're going to take a rocket to Mars, you head off in a certain direction and you have to do lots of course corrections along the way. So it actually has come in pretty handy over the years, and I do get to occasionally throw out the fact that I am a rocket scientist when when that comes up. So, I left the aerospace world behind a long time ago and have been mainly working on consumer-related technologies the last 20 years or so.
And I want to touch on a few of those things. But first, why don't we talk about Tello? So, is that an accurate description? Is that you are trying to change the way that customer service is administered and the speed with which it is administered in any kind of environment?
Absolutely. So the goal with Tello, this is my 7th company, and for this one, I wanted to go and do something big. And the biggest thing I could think to do was to actually improve customer service around the world. And so started looking at ways that you could do that. And one of the ways it actually came to me. I was on the freeway on the 280 here, and I was driving behind a truck, and the truck had one of those bumper stickers that said, "How am I driving? Call
this number."
1-800
Yeah.
whatever." And the thought that occurred to me, this is late 2009, was you can rate truck drivers by calling a telephone number. Well, why couldn't you rate someone who was providing you a service, say a flight attendant, or someone at a hotel front desk, or the grocery cashier? And so the idea was that if you could bring transparency to these everyday transactions using mobile technology, you could raise the bar on customer service around the world. And I think if you can do that, you can build a very valuable company. So that was what we set out to do.
And was it? I mean, have you tried to? I mean, I've tried this many times. I remember I was on a flight from Ottawa, where I am, to California, and I think we stopped in Colorado, and the stewardess, or one of the cabin crew on the flight was exceptional. Like, I've never had a person like this before. There was just something that, I mean, not only did she love her work, it seemed, but she went above and beyond in every aspect, and it was a terrible flight because it was delayed, and you can imagine the people aren't very happy.
Sure.
And I'm one of those guys that I'm really happy that the plane lands safely. I'm not going to complain, right? If we're delayed, that's fine. But I asked her name. I got her all of her credentials and her information, and a bunch of people on the flight did as well. And then I called American Airlines to say, like, okay, who do I talk to about this one person on this flight, because I want to make sure that she gets a great review. And I mean, it was just such a pain that I gave up.
And that's exactly why we started the company. So in fact, American Airlines hands out these little coupons that you're supposed to give to someone when they give you good service, and they send it out to the frequent flyer customers. But I can tell you that those coupons have been sitting in my briefcase for like 10, 15 years, and I've never used them once. So the whole idea was, if you could, in 15 seconds or less, provide positive feedback on an experience that you had, or if it was a negative experience, you could do the same. That information could eventually get to the person's boss, and they could see that and reward the employee for that. So if you think about your experience, or let's say you go shopping and the shoe salesman is great and really helps you out, how do you thank them for that? You don't tip like you do at a restaurant or a bar. And so the next best thing is to let their boss know, so that factors in when it comes review time or whatever it is. So we think of it as virtual tipping, and in fact, 85% of the ratings on Tello are positive, which was a little bit of a surprise for us. So it's the same sort of concept. When someone does a great job for you, thank them by giving them a positive Tello rating. And if you have a problem, and the business needs to know, the manager or the owner, you want them to know something about how they could have served you better, Tello is a great way to do that as well.
Well, let's take a step back from Tello for a second. I want to spend the rest of our time on Tello, but I just want to spend maybe a few minutes on your history as well, because I've done some reading of you. This is your 7th startup. You've been involved in, I think, 15 startups. And it seems like every company that you've been involved with or have started up has either flourished, gone on to be acquired, total success. And I'm really intrigued by this, because you obviously pick your spots exceptionally well, and then invest everything into that. I mean, everything. I don't mean just money, but I'm talking about effort and passion and what you're doing. You don't think small.
Absolutely.
So, I mean, walk us through these startups, because not only that, some of the investors in Tello itself are some of the biggest guys in the Valley as well. So there's a lot of trust there with you.
Absolutely. And, my career isn't a straight line, and I don't think, I think most careers are not, but I've been very lucky coming out of MIT. The first 2 companies I went to, Integrated Systems and S3, were both IPOs. Mm-hmm. And, most people don't get to experience one IPO in their career, let alone 2. And, I didn't realize at the time how lucky I actually was. because I haven't had one since then. The companies have been acquisitions, and not all of them have succeeded, but the vast majority have. And I think over the course of those various companies, it was real-time software, then semiconductors, then consumer multimedia CD-ROMs, if you remember those, and then moving into the internet space in the mid '90s. Once I got to that point, I knew I only wanted to work on consumer technologies, and that's essentially what I've done ever since then. So a lot of it is picking markets that are large and have great potential. A lot of it is finding the right team to work with and really executing well. But it is a lot of hard work, and it does take its toll. It's hard on me physically. It's hard on my family sometimes. But I'm a big believer in doing what you love to do, and I know that what I love to do is to work in startups. So I can't imagine doing anything else other than helping other startups out, which I've done from time to time, depending on what's going on with my companies. I also tend to sprint for a number of years and then take some time off and sort of, get back in shape, get reacquainted with my family and sort of gear up for the next race, if you will. And it sort of suits my personality. I give it everything until I'm exhausted, and then I take some time off, and I've always been trying to find that balance, but not very successful at it.
But it seems like there are certain types of entrepreneurs that follow a path, that succeed or fail in one company, and then don't vary too much from, say, guardrails in an industry. So in Ottawa, this is a very telecom-centric city, even though it's dominated by software companies, small software companies. So investors here, for example, and entrepreneurs are focusing on, okay, so I've got my telecom hat on, what can I do next? I got my telecom hat on, what can I do next? Even if
Right.
even if the industry doesn't exist. But for you, it seems like you sniff out opportunities. It doesn't matter that it could be in telecom, it could be in fiber optics, as you said, it could be in real-time software services, and then internet, mobile. I mean, it could be any of these things, and you got inspired by Tello from a bumper, a bumper sticker on a truck, and I've seen those everywhere, and I say the exact same thing. So, is that part of you take the mold off, and you're not focusing on an industry? Is that part of what appeals? That's got to be the appeal of an entrepreneur.
Yeah, I think it's I come up with ideas all the time, and I'm probably my harshest critic. So when I look at a new idea, I have to be convinced not only that technology can come to bear on the problem and help make it a better experience for a customer, but also is there a business there? And so going through all these ideas all the time, most of them fall down on one or multiple fronts. And so what was interesting about this one in particular was it was clear to me a number of things were happening. Number one, that mobile was growing. And in 2009, the iPhone had clearly taken off. Android was up and coming and looking like it was going to be very successful, but it wasn't quite to the level that it is today. Yeah. So mobile was going to be big, and also location-based services with the advent of GPS. It looked like you could build some interesting things around that. Aside from that, I'm a big believer in great customer service. I think part of it comes from growing up in a restaurant family and seeing the way that my grandfather and my dad and my uncles took care of customers when issues came up. And so one of the things that occurred to me is you seeing businesses differentiate on the basis of customer service alone. So take Zappos, for example. What could be more commodity than selling shoes over the internet? Well, they're not a shoe company. They're a service company. And you see the same thing happening with airlines like Virgin America, where they're saying we're going to take a very commoditized thing, flying through the air, commercial air travel, and we're going to add some cool purple mood lights and Lady Gaga videos, and we're going to have great customer service as well. And so you saw them take, again, a commodity offering and focus on service and succeed. And so I kind of put those two together and said, well, businesses are clearly willing to pay more for this, and the importance of service is rising. Mobile is going to be everywhere. Someday, and I don't know when that will be, everyone's going to have a smartphone, or the vast majority, 85, 90% of people. And so so why not go after, a market that's like that? So that's sort of how I got there. And you never can predict where these things come from. I think the best entrepreneurs I've seen are the ones where, inspiration can strike at any moment, but it's ideas are cheap, right? It's execution that matters. And so it's how do you take that idea and then go execute on it and turn it into a real business. And I tell people we're in the bottom of the first inning of this company, Tello. We released the iPhone app, we have the web app, but there's a heck of a lot more to come. And this is the earliest stages of where we want to take this.
So talk about that for a second. When you look at launching, when did you launch Tello? What was that, last year?
Yeah, we did a technology demo at the TechCrunch Disrupt conference in the fall, and it was a little bit smoke and mirrors, and then we officially launched the real iPhone app and website in February of this year. So we're going on 2 months now. Yeah. So just about 2 months ago.
So talk about that TechCrunch Disrupt. What was that like for launching your product? Was that a great way to gauge interest, visibility, understanding?
Oh yeah, no, it was really good. In fact, the way that came about is one of our investors, Dave McClure, owed me $100,000 as his investment in Tello, and we decided to take advantage of a TechCrunch party that was happening in August, and have him present me with the check and make sure that someone from TechCrunch was watching. So it happened to be Paul Carr, and Dave said, "Hey, Paul, you might want to get a photo of this." And after he discovered his BlackBerry battery was dead, he borrowed a phone from someone else and took a picture of it. And next thing I know, I get an email and a call from Michael Arrington saying, "We're having this Disrupt thing. Maybe you guys should be part of that." So it was a really great launch platform for us. Got interest not only from investors and users, but also importantly from potential employees. And so just a really good launch vehicle for us. The challenge was that we weren't really ready yet. So but when someone asks you to launch at a TechCrunch conference, you kind of have to take advantage of that. And would have been even better if we had all the stuff ready to go, but unfortunately we didn't. And then subsequently we put out the final product in February and did a lot of press activity around that. PR is actually a really great tool for getting exposure to consumers. And so ultimately that all that stuff came out once we officially launched in February.
Lots of questions around that. How close was that product that you launched in February to what you presented at Disrupt in the fall?
Well, from a conceptual standpoint, they were very similar, but from a technology perspective, they were completely different. So we actually made the mistake of building the initial prototype using HTML5 and a technology called JQ Touch wrapped in a PhoneGap wrapper.
Yep.
And unfortunately, the performance of that was just really poor for a variety of reasons. I'm not going to blame any specific technology or company, but one of our investors has been kind of hounding us and saying, going the HTML5 route right now is probably a mistake. So we ended up having to completely redo the app natively on the iPhone, and it cost us a couple of months to go back and redo it. But in the end, we now have a product that 5-star rating on the App Store, consumers love it, and it's really snappy and performs well. So I would really caution against trying that set of technologies that I mentioned earlier right now. Someday, I mean, I hope that HTML5 is the savior for all of us, because it makes it hard. Like right now, we don't have an Android app, and I have users who are constantly asking, when are you going to have it? And it's just, with a small team, it's hard to work on 5 or 6 things at the same time. You really have to focus. It's one of the keys to my success, is being able to pick the specific things you need to work on and focus on them and do them well. And so we're going without an Android app and probably losing half our customers as a result. But at least the ones who are using it are having a good experience and enjoying using the product.
So are you trying to perfect it on the iPhone and then bring that capability over to Android? When you talk about focus, like is that the strategy for this?
Yeah, well, the real challenge is we just have many competing priorities right now, and the one we're focusing most heavily on is right now. You can rate a business on Tello. You can tell them what your experience was like, what the customer service was like, but the business can't reply back. So there's currently no way for the business to interact with these customers, and so all of our time right now is going into perfecting that experience. And starting to work with a couple of local businesses now, and then some national businesses coming in the next couple of months, where the businesses will be able to interact with the customers, not only to thank them for the positive feedback, but to resolve issues as issues come up, and then also for them to have detailed data on what's going on in their business. So they'll actually be able to go and look and see, wow, these 3 employees are just doing a great job for me, but these employees, not doing so well. Maybe we need to get them some more training, or work through some things with them because they're consistently getting bad ratings. And so all of that stuff is in the works. And when you have to prioritize, is it do you go do Android, or do you go give businesses a way to connect with the customers that we have? We made the choice to go focus on those businesses for now.
It's funny, you said something that at the very beginning that kind of I think that what you've just said resonates as well. Is that you've been looking for a business model. You look at companies with a business model, right? So look, first the idea has to pass your own litmus test. I have to actually be able to sleep at night and think, okay, the next morning this makes sense.
Absolutely.
But that other part, I've talked to a lot of entrepreneurs. I think over 200 entrepreneurs in the mobile space, and I asked this question, and it's a stock response that I get. We don't care about that right now. Revenue, like the idea might sound great, but I always ask about revenue. Listen, you've got to be able to generate money from this, and
absolutely,
you have to have that Or let me ask you: do you have to have that in the plan when you start for yourself?
Well, I have to at least feel comfortable that there's a path to revenue, and we might wiggle along the way until we get there. But I don't think I ever would have come up with the idea for Twitter. I don't see how there could be revenue there. They're doing some ad stuff, and clearly they've raised a ton of money and have millions or tens of millions of users. But for me personally, I have to be able to look my investors in the eye and say, I think we can get there. Here's the path that we might take. So those are the lenses I usually look at an opportunity through. But there are other companies that I'm sure are focused on just going after users, and if sort of the if you build it, they will come model, and if you build it, a revenue model will come model. But that makes me very uncomfortable. So I like to be able to see there's a chance that we're going to raise a little bit more money here shortly, but there's a chance that might be the last money that we need to raise, because all throughout this process, Steve Blank talks about customer development. We've been talking with businesses, both small and large, and understanding their needs and understanding their issues, and they're already spending millions of dollars on customer service related things. And so, I can see a future where they're spending that money on Tello as opposed to some other things that they're currently spending that money on, which makes for a more straightforward sale than, hey, we're this new thing and we think you should spend money on it. And they say, well, sorry, we've already got our budget allocated. We don't see where that would come from. Here, there's a clear path for them to make a transition.
I think there's two sides to mobile here, and when people talk about engaging in mobile, so I'm a firm believer. I'm not an engineer. I'm left-handed, so I'm actually right-brained, and I think creatively. But I'm entrepreneurial, and I believe in logical steps, like you, right? And the big challenge as an entrepreneur is containing that. But there's two sides to a strategy when you build out for mobile. One of them is the outward-facing strategy, right? Which you're a company, not building like Tello, but you're a restaurant or you're an establishment that's could be bricks and mortar, could be not. So do you build an app? Do you build a mobile website? All of those, that side of the business. Then there's this other side, which I don't think a lot of people are focusing on right now, which is the intangible side. The fact that people are walking around with their mobile, interacting with your business, and you're not listening to that conversation right now.
Right.
Which is a bigger opportunity because of the fact that it's happening, and these companies at some point are going to be desperate to want to start to listen and to interact with those people that are already doing this right now. And clearly Tello fits in that space, which is, hey, Absolutely. Your customers are here. They're already using these tools. Now, how do you mine that information for your benefit to improve your customer service, your products, your services, your people, your location? And so is this the emerging mobile market that you see?
Well, I think, we have a challenging business in that we kind of have to solve both of those issues, right? We're building mobile technologies that consumers use, yeah. And then we're also building the tools that the businesses will use to, manage their business and respond to their customers. So it's a non-trivial thing. You could imagine that those two pieces would work well together, but I think there's a ton of opportunity around tools for businesses to do a better job at whatever it is that they do. Everything from the payment side, yep. With what Square's doing, to the analytics side, and some of the stuff we're trying to do. Businesses are increasingly more savvy about using technology, and we've seen some innovation even around the Groupon and Living Social daily deals space, where these businesses are getting access to new customers and potentially getting people to come back. So I think mobile is just another tool in the arsenal of a business. And I found myself, and I imagine this is true for most people, that I use my phone way more than I'm using my computer these days. And you can pretty much, aside from the small screen size, you can pretty much do just about anything you want to on your iPhone or Android device. And so with more people carrying them and more businesses listening, if you will, to what's coming in over the transom, I think there are a ton of opportunities there, and that's one of the reasons we went after this space was using. If you think about it, every consumer now has a little data collection device in their pocket, and they can vote on that. If you think about what happens, with take American Idol, where the singers go on and sing, and people cast their votes via text message, right? That is a relatively new phenomenon over the last few years, and now I sort of view this as voting for the service that you're getting, right? And so with these little data collection devices in your pocket, there's no reason you can't do just about anything when you're out and about.
So how are you finding your customers now? I mean, are these relationships that you've had before? Are they establishments that you've known before through your investors, or is it just that people are out there looking for something like this, and you guys happen to be there?
And you're talking on the business side, right?
On the business side, yeah, yeah.
Yeah. So, most of them are actually new. Some, in the local space are restaurants that we frequent all the time, and so it's been great starting to work with some of those companies. When we're talking about larger, retail, airline, hotel chain, most of those are new relationships. Some of them I've worked with in the past in various capacities, but most of the people we're interacting with are new, and so it's just a lot of hard work. It's in some cases an introduction might come into us. In others, we'll reach out to somebody. So trying to find the VP of marketing at a major airline is a relatively challenging thing to do, even with all the great tools, LinkedIn and other things around. You might be able to find them, but then actually getting on the phone with them or having a meeting with them is a fairly complicated thing. So this goes back to like one of the key attributes of entrepreneurs is just being relentless. If you do not have it in you to pretty much every day there's a barricade thrown up in front of you, and you have to figure out how to get over, around, or through it. Same thing's happening here with customers. So I decided we want to work with some airlines. Well, I've never worked in the airline industry. How am I going to get to those people? So found a few interesting possibilities, reach out to them, and next thing you know, you're having in-person conversations with them. So but you just have to be relentless. You cannot. I've heard no so many times from investors, from consumers, from potential business partners. You just have to not let that phase you, and just keep believing in your vision, and keep fighting. And it's amazing if you keep doing that. The right people will either find you or you'll find them, and we're seeing that already with some of the businesses that we'll be rolling out this summer. Huge Fortune 500 companies that you've heard of. I can't talk about them yet, but all of that was a result of just good old hard work, and using the resources that we have available to us in our investor network. That's one of the reasons we have 10 of the best angel investors around. Is when I need access to someone, it's great to be able to reach out to some of them and get help when I need it.
And what about on the? I mean, it's a great answer. I mean, tenacity, hard work, elbow grease, anything that you think about, cold calling, listening to no many times, but finally getting a yes, and being in front of them ultimately is really key to building the business. It's not easy, is it?
No, it's not. And like I had a recent experience with a major hotel chain where I got introduced to one person, that went nowhere. I got introduced to a second person, I finally managed to connect with that person, and I hear back, oh, I'm not the right person. You need to talk to person number one, which is the one that I'm trying to. So sometimes there's some dead ends, but I look at that and I view that as a challenge. Same thing with investors. If an investor turns you down, I don't want to say I make it my life's mission to make them regret not having put the money in, but there is a bit of that, and I think Michael Jordan is the best example of that. I don't know if you read much about him, but growing up in Chicago, I was a huge Michael Jordan fan and Bulls fan, and you'd see that he would make up these slights where someone fouls him or says something to him, and he would sort of internalize that and take that as being the ultimate offense that somebody said whatever to him, and that created the fire that led him to go win those 6 championships. And I think as an entrepreneur, you have to take a certain amount of that with you. Not to get mad at somebody who says no. Sometimes I'm annoyed because it's clear that they're just not willing to, to take a leap, and where they have no objections other than they're just afraid, right? But with a business, you just have to be in the right place at the right time. Someone could be, going through a layoff that you don't know about, and have their priorities elsewhere. So you have to just not take it personally. But that fuels me to say, all right, airline number one, you just said no to us. Well, guess what? We're going to get airlines number 2, 3, and 4, and then we're going to come back to you. And by the way, the price that you would have gotten when you were airline number 1, well, it's going to be much higher when you're airline number 5. So it is that fuel, and the same thing is true with whether it's hiring or raising money, yeah, or finding partnerships. That does not kill me, makes me stronger, right?
It's so true.
So trying to internalize that and turn it into a positive, I think, is a critical skill for an entrepreneur.
One of the things that I completely agree, and one of the great skills that entrepreneurs must have, aside from a strong gut, an ability to take rejection and turn that into a kind of a positive energy and use it as fuel as much as it can be. They have to take the abuse, they have to put everything on their shoulder. But one of the great things about entrepreneurs is that they also have a clear vision, and sometimes that vision, I've been victim of this, is not great. Like, you think that your idea is so great, and you don't understand why somebody is rejecting you. But a year later, a year removed from that idea, you look back and think, "Oh my God, that was a terrible idea." But
sure,
you get closed in on that. How do you know when the idea that you're working on is that good idea versus one in your head that from that entrepreneurial stubbornness says that it's a good idea? Is there a difference?
I think sometimes it's hard, and the true entrepreneur will follow that with passion and zeal, and may drive right off a cliff. I think one of the lessons I learned early on in my career is I kept having these instincts that something was either right or wrong. But because I was so young, I didn't quite trust those instincts yet. I would defer to others, and over time, what I discovered was that my instincts were usually right, and I needed to listen to those and to advocate more strongly if I thought something was going in the wrong direction, or pursue something even more vigorously if I thought it was going in the right direction. So I think a lot of it is instinct. I think back to photo and the digital photography space back in the late 90s. I was one of the first investors there. I wasn't full time, but the thought that kept going through my head was, look at what is happening with digital photography. It was just in its infancy at that point. The number of digital cameras was nowhere near to the number of sales of traditional analog cameras, and something just kept telling me that this is a trend that is pretty much unstoppable. And then you look at what happened to Kodak, and talk about a tough time for a business. Imagine you're Kodak, and I don't know the numbers, but the vast majority of your revenue is made up of film and paper. And this little thing called the internet comes along and pretty much wipes out all of or a big chunk of your revenue, and you have to react to that in 3 or 4 years. Like, that is a major thing for a company of that size to adjust to. And in fact, you could argue they're still trying to figure that out. But I think part of it is trusting your gut and going with it. Part of it goes back to what I said earlier about not only believing that there's a technology solution to a problem, but there's also a business model there. So, being able to see both sides of that, I think, is pretty important. But, sometimes you do end up just going off that cliff. And, luckily, entrepreneurs have 9 lives, and so you get to go do another one after that if it doesn't work out. Some of the biggest successes here in Silicon Valley, came after someone had a huge crater, as we call it. So, and vice versa. You could be a huge success and then go create a crater after that. So you never really know what's going to happen. I think it's a combination of skill and also a lot of luck as well along the way. You can't do this without being lucky. You can make some bets and use your intuition and your analysis tools to come to a conclusion. But sometimes you just have to be in the right place at the right time, and luck plays a big part as well.
Yeah, serendipity is beautiful when it works out.
Absolutely.
You talked a little bit earlier about PR, and did you use PR on both sides, or have you leveraged PR for the actual iPhone client side to create awareness for that product? Because there's one thing to get business, and the other thing is to now find users. Because I'm sure that one predicates the other, right?
Well, in our case, we need both, and so it's a little bit of chicken and the egg and the chicken again, right? We have to build both sides up at the same time. So our focus with PR initially was solely on the consumer side, and some of that bled over into the business side as well, and we ended up getting lots of inbound inquiries from major Fortune 500 companies as a result of being in the Wall Street Journal or in the USA Today, depending on what the situation was. But our initial focus on PR was all around the consumer side, and it's a very cost-effective way to get the word out to millions of people. But you can't just do PR. There are lots of other things that come into play as well, and building some social features into your product. Being able to understand what's going on in the blogosphere, and getting the word out via social media tools. So PR has been a great tool for me traditionally, both when I was selling not only physical goods but also consumer internet products, and I've always found it to be a very cost-effective way to get the word out.
Well, I mean, do you have? Is it so? It's been effective to you, and you started this before the launch, or on the launch, or around the launch. What was your PR strategy? We
when we were at TechCrunch Disrupt, we didn't really do any PR there. We responded to the inbound inquiries, but it was mostly when we launched in February. That's when we did outbound. I spent 2 weeks on the road, both on the East Coast as well as here on the West Coast, and a lot of that is. It does get a little repetitive after a while, telling the same story over and over again, say 50 times. But the response we got was tremendous. On our website, there's probably 25, 30 different articles that were the result of that press tour. And I think what was really interesting about this launch was for the first time, I think in my career, there was not a single negative story about what we were doing. Sometimes you launch something and people make fun of it, or they think it's stupid or whatever. In this case, 100% of the articles were positive. There was a doubt here and there about, gee, I wonder if they can do this, or will they be able to pull that off? But by and large, overwhelmingly positive, and that was really a tribute to the team that built the product, and also just the press really being able to get what we were up to.
All right, I've got, obviously, as we talk here, I got 1,000 different questions. Cognizant of time, one of the things that I obviously noticed about you and your team is you got a small team, and you've said this before. You focus your opportunities, or you focus where you're looking at to create a great experience for the customer, which is adding enough features that they're interested in it, but not too many that it becomes complicated.
Yes.
And then at some point you roll it out to other platforms, but first and foremost, satisfy the customer need, which is a huge lesson. Like, if everybody who's listening or watching this, just take one thing out of this, that's got to be it. About the product, how do you ensure that, or how do you allay concern or fears that people will be targeted, so that establishments will be targeted by competitors, or an individual will be targeted by somebody who has had a bad day, or many people have had a bad day?
Sure.
How do you normalize that?
Yeah, it's a real challenge. I think, first of all, we take it pretty seriously, and so we haven't had a situation like this yet. But if somebody were to find that the system was somehow being gamed, and notify us, we would take that very seriously. There are a number of things that you can do. On the consumer side, let's say you were slightly evil and you decided that you would just go up there and do a bunch of ratings for yourself. Well, we've actually had that situation occur a couple of times.
Yeah.
And,
so stacking the deck in your favor.
yeah, and so what's happened is people rate themselves, and then they realize that those ratings are posted to the web, and so it'll say, like, Bob gave a thumbs up to Bob.
Nice.
and boy, don't they feel embarrassed when they realize that has gone on the web. And so we'll get an email saying, "Hey, can you help me delete this
mistake?"
Yeah,
that's
out there.
it.
So I think people quickly learn that kind of stuff, won't make sense. If you were to just go up there and rate things continuously, we would obviously know the IP address that things were coming from, and we could see if a business had been targeted, by a specific individual or group of individuals, what would be going on there. But by and large, it's a lot like rating products on Amazon, or rating restaurants on Yelp. A lot of the not every review is going to be 100% accurate. There's no way that we can ensure that. What we can do is have you register with a real name, so that we're at least letting this is not anonymous. I think anonymous rating services don't work, and so you got your real name on there. Something Amazon taught us, right, is putting up your real name. You should be able to stand behind whatever it is that you're saying, and then just sort of being aware that when issues come up, going after and addressing them. But what I found is most consumers, when they're looking through reviews, let's say you're looking at Amazon, you want to buy a new DVD player on Amazon, there'll be some crackpot reviews on there that, oh, this thing was terrible, I couldn't get it to work, and you just sort of mentally filter those out, and probably some 5-star reviews as well. And the real helpful ones are the ones sort of in the middle, like, well, here's what it's good for and here's what it's not good for. Right. There's sort of the balanced reviews as opposed to the extremes. So we don't claim to have it 100% right. Our goal is to make it really frictionless, really easy for you to do a rating of customer service, such that in aggregate the data is valuable to not only consumers but to the businesses. And we're not going to get all of those exactly right, but we can get pretty close, and that's what we've been focusing on.
Yeah. So I mean, ultimately, you drop the high mark, you drop the low mark, and there's always going to be people who are over enthusiastic, i.e., related.
Exactly.
Or under enthusiastic, i.e., competitors, or having a bad day themselves, and
yep.
You'll see a normalized line, and there's going to be anomalies across, right?
And the goal is that over time, as this ratings data grows, that those anomalies will sort of wash out. Yeah. They'll end up being noise as opposed to signal, which we think is the way that this will go.
So speaking of that, long term with Tello. I mean, you're 2 months in, Joe, so I understand that this is going to be, it's a tough question, but you strike me as the type of guy that looks a little bit forward, and thinks, okay, listen, what other businesses can we be in with Tello? What kind of, I mean, you're going to be collecting ultimately a lot of data. You're going to be doing analytics on this. You're going to be improving people's customer service and the way they interact and real-time information. What other businesses are there in here for you? There's got to be, I can think of a dozen probably.
Oh yeah. So, well, if you think about ratings in general, we picked a specific segment to focus on initially, which is customer service. But there's no reason that you couldn't do, instant ratings of anything else. Take products for example.
Yeah.
So we're not focusing on that now. That's something that we might choose to do later on down the road. But for now, the real focus is on customer service overall, and not only helping consumers to be able to express their opinions and get their issues solved, but to help businesses understand how to make their business a better business. And that little piece right there that I described is going to be a multi-year journny. So
So one thing at a time.
yeah, so we gotta get that right before we go off and worry about anything else. But you can imagine that with mobile devices and with businesses engaging with their consumers, that there could be lots of things that we could do down the road. And this is just the beginning for us.
Last question has to be about the investors that you've brought on. It doesn't strike me that these guys are well, I guess they are. They're calm investors because they've been involved in lots of investments previous to this in lots of companies. But when you bring what you call 10 super angels ultimately together into a company like this, there must be some kind of expectation. So first of all, why bring investors in? And second of all, are they patient with you to build this, to build a good long-term company, or are they interested in doing this a little bit faster than you are?
No, it's been great. It's actually my first time doing a company in this sort of mold where we have 10 individual investors, and some are funds and some are individuals, but let's call them seed stage investors. And it's actually been tremendous. If you think about, most of these people are great advisors as well. Yeah. And so I surrounded myself with the best people I could find. Some I had worked with in the past. So, Russ Siegelman and Mark Goines were two people who had previously invested in me. One as a venture capitalist, one as an angel before, and some of them were new people that I hadn't met before. So, but the way these companies go now, I view myself as having access to 10 people who can help me with just about anything. So if I need something specific related to issue A, I can go to Dave McClure. If it's something else, I can call up Chris Saka. It's whatever I really need. And the people I'm most involved with, True was our largest investor, and so John Callahan from True, I probably spend the most time between him and Mark and Russ, but all of them have been helpful in some ways. And I think it's a real asset to startup companies to be able to have these people involved, and not traditional VCs sometimes like the backseat drive a little bit more, and maybe
very well put.
reach from the backseat and grab the steering wheel in some cases. And I've lived through a couple of situations like those, and those usually end up in car crashes. So I in this case, there's nobody who's trying to come in from the backseat, and I just feel like we have 10 great resources who are helping us out, and they're available to me whenever I need them. They're completely supportive, and as we go off and raise the next round here, I'm sure that having them behind us will be a tremendous asset to us.
Yeah, I can't imagine that it wouldn't be. And so when you take all these different guys together, could you have built the same thing outside of Silicon Valley, outside of Palo Alto, outside of California?
It would. You mean in terms of the investor syndicate, or
caliber of investors? Their desire to, their risk tolerance to put money into a company like this.
Yeah, probably not. There's really no place else like Silicon Valley.
No.
I being in downtown Palo Alto, I can go out and walk down the street and bump into, three or four investors that I know. And while I'm walking down that street, I'm probably passing 20 or 40 different startup companies. So there really is a concentration of those skills here, and it makes it hard during the boom times because those skills are in very high demand by some of the bigger companies who can afford to spend millions of dollars, like Google and Facebook and Twitter. And it also means that there are many startups starting, and so a lot of these resources are distributed across all of those different startup companies. But just having access to the lawyers and the investors and the startup resources. I know, I'm biased because I've been here for a long time now, but I really while I think there's some up and coming places. New York City is obviously growing, and there've been pockets around the world. I think there's really no place like it, and that's why I can't imagine living anywhere else. So I think I'll be here for a long time.
Come on. I mean, Ottawa, Canada, very enticing. It's nation's capital, seat of parliament, second coldest capital on the planet during the winter. It's enticing. Come on.
It is. It's hard to resist. I'll give it a little thought. But when I left Chicago, let's just say the weather was not something that I was really missing, and now when I talk to my family back there, and I hear about the snowstorm that's coming through
in May,
my blood is thinned over the years. So
Joe, you've gotten soft, haven't you?
Yeah, I've gotten soft. That's exactly it. I'll have to come visit Ottawa sometime, but I don't think I'll be moving there anytime soon.
Come in the summer. You're surrounded by all this energy in the valley. There's a lot of conversation around some of the size of investments that you've seen over the last little while, like Color, for example, getting $40+ million, and a lot of these companies. I think in a day there was $100 million sold out, or $150 million in 3 companies. And you lived through the Bay Area during the .com bubble and bust. Are we seeing this, like, in your opinion, or is this built on fundamentals, good fundamentals, or is this a mobile bubble?
Well, I lived through the first so-called bubble, and it was definitely a bubble. And what was going on back then, companies were going public, and with very little to no revenue, and in most cases no profit. And I think the difference this time around is, the companies that are out there, take Facebook and Zynga and LinkedIn. I mean, these are the companies with real revenue, and we don't always know their profit situation. So I think that aspect is a little different. But I do worry, and the guys who founded Color.com are friends of mine, and Flipboard just raised $50 million. I know some of the people over there. I do think, as an entrepreneur, you want to raise money when the raisin is good, and so it is a good time to be raising money right now. But that said, I think having too much money in a startup company can be a bad thing. And so what I worry about is, when you get $40 or $50 million into your company, how does the company culture and the drive to succeed change? And I've seen it. It's inevitable in every startup company when the expense reports start coming in and people are a little less cautious about the money, and salaries start to creep up because you're trying to retain people and get the best. So I do worry that there's a little bit of an escalation, and you might even call it a bubble in that regard. But a lot of these entrepreneurs have lived through this before, and so I suspect they'll spend their hard-earned cash wisely. But I find that the absence of money really causes you to focus and really causes clarity. And so,
boy, does it ever!
Yeah, it absolutely magnifies that. So, I'd be a little bit worried about it. But the fundamentals here are much different than they were 10, 11 years ago. So I don't think we'll see, the similar sort of collapse that we saw in the public markets. I mean, most of these companies are not public yet. So, I think it'd be hard for that to happen.
That's great. And that's a great point, because most of these companies are not public. 10 years ago, they would have been public and would have been crushed by the burden of a public company. And
Exactly.
today, companies like Facebook, it's a consideration, and Groupon are considerations, but not. But it hasn't happened yet. And the beautiful thing about 10 years ago, the way I look at it is that it took almost 10 years for a lot of that technology that was built during that period of time to come to fruition and really show value. And I think that we're at an escalated pace now around mobile, that it's almost like a company like Tello can go from concept in the fall, product in February, to customers in March, and revenue in April, right? And
Absolutely.
that's how quick we're moving right now. In this, we're not waiting years; we're waiting months from idea to business, and that's the best part of this, isn't it?
No, it's awesome. And I think back to when I did when.com back in the late 90s, and we raised $7.5 million. A big chunk of that went toward infrastructure. And I tell people, you replace that $3 or $4 million worth of infrastructure with a credit card nowadays.
With
to
Amazon Web Services, exactly.
So very different, and I think that's why you can see these companies, survive and even thrive on $500K to $1 million seed investment. You don't need to go build all that infrastructure, and a lot of the software tools. I remember when I was last programming, there was no such thing as going to Stack Overflow and looking up stuff on the internet, and so it's a much more collaborative and open environment. We'd pull out some books and talk to our friends back then, so it does make it a lot easier to get a company going and to have it become successful. So. Yeah, great time to be an entrepreneur and to be building companies.
I love it, Joe. I've monopolized enough of your time. I could probably spend many more hours in conversation with you. I'd love to do it in person on a warm patio somewhere in California at some point.
Come on out anytime.
I'd love to do that. Thank you, Joe, for doing this. I really appreciate your insight. I love the passion that you bring. I love this idea, of Tello. I'm a huge advocate of customer service. I believe that that's what makes businesses. I spent 12 years in the restaurant industry, so maybe that's where it comes from. I made my living on making people happy, and people don't do it enough. And so I applaud you for the vision of Tello, and certainly if your track record remains consistent. I'm pretty sure that we'll be hearing about Tello not only in the U.S. but up in Canada at some point as well, and it will be the bar, the litmus test for hiring, for going into restaurants or locations, and the kind of service that and keeping people accountable for the service that they should get.
Absolutely, that's the goal.
Well, listen, Joe.
Thank you
so much. And for those people who are still watching and listening to this, I know you found some value out of this. And from Joe's experience, if you don't know Joe, go to Tello.com, and Tello, Tello.com, and take a look at the pedigree, and then come back and listen to it again, because then you'll understand why the words that Joe says are so important. Thank you guys for listening. Thank you for watching. Joe, thank you for participating. And this has been another episode of Untether.tv. See you next time.